And as a reporter, this issue came up a lot because I think, one, a lot of people don't understand wealth, how it's accumulated, how it's passed down, what its importance is. And people don't actually understand kind of the massive gap that exists between black families and white families, how it came to be, and if there's any hope of narrowing it. Andre, I want to start with you. Can you talk a little bit about the scope broadly of where we are when it comes to the black wealth gap and how that plays out in Memphis?
Yeah, first I want to just preface my comments with first to say thanks for having me. Hello, Memphis. But I typically preface my comments by stating there's nothing wrong with black people that ending racism can't solve. that so much of our conversation about wealth and income resorts to things like increasing wages when we know that an increase in wages will not close a wealth gap. That the wealth gap that predicts that black and brown people will have zero net wealth by 2050 was created by federal policy. The more we talk about increasing wages and these other aspects, which are important, I want people to eat. But let's not get it twisted. The way we gave wealth to white people, we can give wealth to black people primarily through housing policy, business policies, and other significant things. My studies, one of my most significant studies around housing. And we did a study where we looked at homes where the share of the black population was 50% or higher versus homes in places where the share was less than 1%. And what we found after an apples-to-apple comparison, we control for education, we control for crime, we control for all those Zillow metrics like walkability and all those different things, fancy terms that we use. And what we found that homes in majority black places are worth 23% less, and that's also true in the nation as it is in Memphis. And nationally, homes are devalued by $48,000 per home, accumulatively $156 billion of lost equity, simply because black people live around the home. Now, I want to put this into context. That would have paid for, that $156 billion in lost assets would have paid for about 4 million black-owned businesses, given the average startup cost for black-owned businesses. It would have financed 8 million four-year college degrees. It would have replaced the pipes in Flint 3,000 times over. It would have paid for all of the damage in Hurricane Katrina. You know, and by the way, the homes in Memphis metros in black neighborhoods are worth about $24,000 less, robbing school districts, robbing police systems, robbing communities, not allowing people to weather the shocks that will inevitably come from economic crises. So I just wanted to say that we are not going to create black wealth without a serious conversation on federal policy, bringing money directly to somehow homeowners, black folk in these places that have been historically devalued over time.
Yeah.
If it's nothing else that a person remembers in economics, and this is even true, because it's the same thing that I had in the original version, going back prior to 1984, and it's also in the 1984 edition, and that's on page 60. The use of time and energy, that is what economics is. Economics is not just about money. When people think about economics, they think about money. No, money is just a tool of economics, a tool of using what? Time and energy. That's all it is. Money is about the use of time and energy. So economics is about how you use all of your time and all of your energy as an individual person. And it says here, at the end of each day, measure the value of your accomplishments only by how effective you were in saying or doing something that proved to be useful in helping to end white supremacy, which is what black economics is supposed to be about, ending white supremacy, and or in helping to produce justice. If you're helping to produce justice, you're helping to end white supremacy. If you're helping to end white supremacy, you're helping to produce justice. Why? Because white supremacy is about non-justice. It's about guaranteeing that people will be mistreated and guaranteeing that the people who need help the most won't get it. That's what white supremacy is for.
Economics means the correct distribution of and or balance between all animals, persons, places, plants, things, etc. Economics in the correct sense is the sum total of all of the thought, speech, and or action used to produce maximum efficiency and revealing truth in a manner that promotes the establishment of justice and correctness in all areas of activity. Economics also means using all things, thought, speech, and or action with maximum efficiency with the objective of eliminating racism, white supremacy. Economics does not mean simply acquiring, saving, and or spending money. Economics is not a tool of money. Money is a tool of economics, as he stated in the clip. Economics is the result of people speaking and acting effectively in the production of justice and correctness. It is not simply how memory is handled that demonstrates economics. It is a matter of how everything is handled and to what end. Economics pertains to how all time and all energy is used. In order for a person who is a victim of racism, white supremacy, to practice economics, that person must speak and act to produce justice and correctness in the sum total of everything that he or she says or does. This includes the use of time and energy, the consumption of food and drink, sexual intercourse, and thoughts of sexual intercourse, the use of music, the manner and use of labor, etc. If racism, white supremacy is the greatest and most powerful force against the production of justice, and which is the balance between people, and if justice is necessary in order to produce peace, then there is reason to believe that it is the duty of every person in the known universe to use all of his or her time and energy each and every day to end racism so that justice and peace can be produced. During the existence of racism, this is the correct way to think of economics. Welcome back to On the Shoulders of Giants. I am Joseph Ward, and this is the continued reading of Neely Fuller's, the reading and the reviewing of Neely Fuller's The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a compensatory counter-racist code, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, white supremacy. And today, this video, we are covering Area 1, which is economics, and we're starting on page 59. I read from page 59 to page 79, and down to 79. The last thing I read was the notes on page 79, so you can keep up with me. But Neely Fuller Jr. is covering what economics is, and once again, I'll read it again. Economics means the correct distribution of and or balance between all animals, persons, places, plants, things, etc. Economics is the correct sense in the sum total of all of the thought, speech, and or action used to produce maximum efficiency and revealing truth in a manner that promotes the establishment of justice and correctness in all areas of activity. Economics also means using all things, thought, speech, and or action with maximum efficiency with the objective of eliminating racism, white supremacy. So I started with the clip talking about the Black wealth gap and what it would take to close the Black wealth gap. Then you see, I paired it with Neely Fuller Jr. explaining what economics is. So we have a different view of economics than the compensatory idea in view of economics given to us by Neely Fuller Jr. Because most of us think of economics as how money works. And he's saying, no, money is a tool of economics. Economics is how productive that we spend our time, energy, and efforts in our everyday life. And all of that should be used in the elimination of white supremacy and the production of justice. And if all of the activities that we engage in, including sexual intercourse, are not productive, then we need to eliminate those activities because we're practicing economics in the wrong manner, especially if one of our goals is to eliminate white supremacy or get from under the thumb of white supremacy. We have to practice a proper means of economics, a productive means of economics. It's more than just acquiring resources. It's how we use our everyday, how we use our time and energy every day. What are our thoughts? What are we doing every day to produce justice and correctness? So he goes into explaining what time and energy is. And he says, at the end of the day, measure the value of your accomplishments only by how effective you were in saying or doing something that proved to be useful in helping to end white supremacy, racism, and or helping to produce justice, which is balance between people. He goes on to say, as long as white supremacy exists, use all of your time and energy doing the following, and do not willingly make or maintain contact with other persons except for the following purposes. And he has 4 purposes that we should be engaging in on a regular basis. That was part of the video clip of Neely Fuller, but I wanted to read it. So I didn't add that. So I want to read it. So the first thing is producing, building, repairing, improving, and or cleaning those things that have a constructive value and using them for constructive purposes only. I'll read it again. Producing, building, repairing, improving, and or cleaning those things that have a constructive value and using them for a constructive purpose. If it works for us, maintain it. Make sure it works at its maximum capacity and continue to use it to produce for us, to produce things that we need, but ultimately that can lead to justice and correctness and the elimination of white supremacy. Second thing is studying, writing, asking questions, and or exchanging views with others about all aspects of how to eliminate racism and how to produce justice in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war, and counter-war. So studying, writing, asking questions, and or exchanging views with others about all aspects of how to eliminate racism in all areas of our activity. So the third thing is eating and sleeping correctly only as necessary. Getting correct sleep. Eating as healthy as we can. Eating as right as we can with all the food being messed up and being tainted these days. So the healthiest food that you can find it. Get the best rest. Take care of your body. I started by exercising. I've been exercising for about a month. Start by exercising, doing everything you can to be the greatest version of yourself, the most productive version of yourself that can lead to helping the community and producing justice and correctness. Engaging in sexual intercourse no more than 2 times every 7 days and using a minimum amount of time and resources in association with such engagement. So he's not saying don't have sex. He's not saying don't have good sex. He ain't saying don't get your back blown out of nothing like that. But what he's saying, don't spend too much time having sex, because now you begin to be unproductive, right? So if the sexual intercourse is not productive, then you shouldn't be doing it, right? But if you're spending all of your time having sex, if you're spending too much time having sex, then you're not being productive in other areas that could give you what you need to seek justice. All right. So he explains time and energy and his 4 things that we should be doing to help us produce justice. So the suggestions are the 4 basic and correct ways for a victim of white supremacy, non-white person, to use his or her time and energy in a manner that is not too restrictive and at the same time economically constructive. If each victim of racism would limit all of his or her activities to more than the aforementioned, most of his or her problems would be greatly minimized in a very short amount of time. So victims of racism who are serious about eliminating racism, white supremacy, and or who are serious about producing justice cannot afford to engage in any activities other than the aforementioned. And I'll go over them again. producing, building, repairing, improving, and or cleaning those things that have a constructive value and using them for constructive purposes only. Studying, writing, asking questions, and or exchanging views with others about all aspects of how to eliminate racism and how to produce justice in all areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war, counter war. Eating and sleeping correctly only as necessary. And the fourth one is engaging in sexual intercourse no more than 2 times every 7 days and using a minimum amount of time and resources in association with such engagements. All right. So the voluntary and constructive use of time and or energy by substantial numbers of victims of racism would have a very damaging effect on the continued practice of racism and white supremacy. Racism could not continue to exist for a while, but only with great difficulty. A great improvement in the production of justice would be immediately evident. At the same time, each victim of racism would quickly become a stronger and greatly improved version. So what he's getting at is racism is about the production of the Negro mindset, the unproductive, destructive Negro mindset. The compensatory code is about producing a productive Black person, a productive African, a productive person who will effectively oppose the system of white supremacy, who will effectively, and not just one person, but a number of people who unite under the code of conduct, and their behavior changes because they're following the code of conduct. And when you're being the greatest version of yourself, now it's harder for white supremacy to continue to exist because, for one, we're not perpetuating it. We're not the ones involved in being catastrophic to ourselves. And we will have more people who are apt to oppose the system of white supremacy. Just put out a video last Friday about the maroon mindset and the maroon being beaten out of us. Maybe the maroon will be reborn within more than just a few of us that it exists in. It will have more people with the maroon mindset, more people with the maroon spirit, because we have rebuilt ourselves to be the greatest versions of ourselves, and we are model citizens for ourselves under the compensatory United Code. Not model citizens for America, but model citizens for ourselves under the United Independent Compensatory Code. The maintenance and refinement of racism depends greatly on the ability of the racist to keep their victims constantly engaged in a variety of activities that are wasteful of time and energy, and or that are in other ways directly supportive of the continuation of racism. So if we change our behavior, we won't be participants in the continuation of racism. Therefore, each victim of racism should use all of his or time and energy in a manner that results in the least amount of waste and frustration, while at the same time greatly improving his or her ability to counteract racism, white supremacy in all areas of activity, including economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war, and counter war. So, using every aspect of our being, all our time, all our energy, all our thoughts, all our efforts to improve our lot in life. So he says this is important. At no time should any person seek the company of, make deliberate contact with, or voluntarily maintain in the presence of other persons except for the purpose of speaking and or acting in the support of or suggesting the 4 points of economics that he formatted. So anything else, he's stating basically what he's saying is anything else that we're doing outside of the 4 points that he gave us is unproductive and is counter to us eliminating racism. It's pro the maintenance of racism. So if we don't get in line with doing what we're supposed to do under this United Independent Compensatory Code, racism won't end because we're going to continue it ourselves. And that's all a part of the refinement and the maintenance of racism, is to create us Black people into the Negroes, the Negro mindset, and we will pass that culture down and the mindsets down, and we will make that something of importance, not understanding the destructive nature. Matter of fact, defending the behavior and the mindset and the culture because it has become second nature. I don't want to be another nigga. All right. If you don't have constructive employment and or if you are without the things that you must have for constructive self-support, food, garments, or shelter, etc., do one or more of the following, preferably in the following sequences. Go wherever necessary to seek constructive temporary shelter or housing from someone whom you believe can afford to provide you with constructive temporary shelter, a hut, a room, a tent, a shed, a cabin, a shack, etc., anything that they can give you. Go wherever necessary to seek constructive employment that will help you receive constructive support, which is food, garment, shelter, transportation, medicine, constructive information, etc. Seek to make compensatory emergency investment request, so-called begging or pleading from white people who you have reason to believe that can the best afford to help you receive the most constructive support. This support should include information and or assistance that will help you to constructively support yourself. And he's going to explain what he means by asking white people for the resources. He's going to explain that later in the book, and he's going to explain what he's talking about with the begging, because there were quotations around begging and pleading. All right. So I want to give that context. He has notes under this. Under no circumstances is it correct to rob or steal from anyone at any time for any so-called reason. It is correct to ask for what is needed. If what is needed cannot be produced by the person asking, during the existence of white supremacy racism, and according to compensatory counter-racist logic, whatever a non-white person does in any area of activity is directly or indirectly a reaction to white supremacy racism, usually in the form of a cry of help. During the existence of white supremacy and according to compensatory counter-racist logic, if a non-white person asks a white person for money in order to do something of constructive value, that non-white person is not so-called begging. He or she is a business person making a compensatory investment request. This compensatory investment request should be regarded as a normal requirement in order to invest in the process of replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. And to be clear, he's talking about white people who claim to be against the system of white supremacy and whose actions have showed are against the system of white supremacy. Those are the white people that you can get the compensatory investment request from, as far as the resources that you need to help further fight the system of white supremacy. You can't fight a war with no resources. And whether you want to be or not, we are at war, whether you want to be or not. So you need resources and you need allies. Basically, that's what he's getting at. You need resources and you need allies, and you need to do what you can to get the resources from your allies. And you need to make sure that you have competent and loyal allies as well. So that's an explanation for what he's talking about. According to compensatory logic, it is always so-called embarrassing and incorrect to rob or steal. According to compensatory logic, it is neither embarrassing nor incorrect to beg for constructive help or compensatory investment requests when your sincere efforts at trying to do constructive work for yourself or others has ended in failure. If you don't have what you need to get to where you want, you're going to have to do what you need to get what you need. So that's what he's saying. You got to do what you can to get the resources that you need to make the moves that you need for yourself and your people to effectively fight the system of white supremacy. Always be mentally and physically prepared to function constructively and to become stronger by doing more with less material support. And he gives 5 examples. Eat less food and drink more water. We can all stand to do that. Black America's obesity rate is out of hand. Acquire, wear, and maintain only those garments that are absolutely necessary. You got to stop stunting. Maintain adequate but basic shelter facilities within the maximum logical use of very little space. Be prepared to move yourself and all of your possessions many times, and make sure that your most important possessions can be moved frequently from place to place with little difficulty. And these are for the people who want to effectively fight the system of white supremacy. You got to be prepared for everything. Avoid acquiring anything that is not necessary for supporting constructive thought, speech, and action. If it don't help you fight the system of white supremacy, you shouldn't have it. Shouldn't be using it, shouldn't be indulging in it. Those are things we all, include myself, have to work on. When talking about the health of a person, talk about correct health and correct economics as being one and the same. According to compensatory counter-racist logic, economics pertains to the manner in which all time and energy is used. Health is basically the combination of the use of time and energy in all areas of activity. Therefore, correct health and correct economics is the way that time and energy is used in regards to all persons, all creatures, and all things in their interaction with one another within the known and unknown universe. The correct use of time and energy equals correct health. We got to be healthier. We got to be healthier. Eat less, drink more water, get healthier. We've got to be healthier. All of us got to be better. Our health is literally killing us. When talking about the mental health of people, say that the best way to produce correct thinking in the minds of people during the existence of white supremacy racism is to explain all of the non-white people of the known universe exactly what white supremacy is and how it works in all areas of activity, including economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, war, and counter-war. So he goes in and he emphasizes, eat and drink correctly and only as necessarily. What you put into your mind and body will have the effect of either being constructive or non-constructive. Everything that you eat, drink, breathe, inject, or absorb into your body should always make you think, speak, and act more constructively. Many of the things that people, both white and non-white, are exposed to, and many of the things that they eat, drink, breathe, inject, or absorb do great harm. It is correct for all people to do all that they can to learn about everything that they eat, drink, breathe, inject, or absorb. All people should learn the difference between true food and false food. To do so requires much study, but such study should be done without dangerous experimentation. Much care should be taken to avoid producing mistaken or non-constructive conclusions. So go out. We got to put more effort and energy into eating better and eating more correctly and eating as healthy as we can and getting the best versions of the food that we can. If you got to grow it yourself, get the best seeds and grow it yourself. If you got to do that, do it. Do what we can to be healthy and self-sustainable. Got to think about all areas. Health and economics covers all areas. Even sex covers all areas of human activity. So understanding how these areas intersect, what we do in our everyday lives affects all areas of activity. So you're not serious about fighting the system of racism if you're not utilizing your time constructively and you're unhealthy. You are helping to further the system of white supremacy if you are being unproductive and you're unhealthy. Do the best that you can to eat and sleep correctly and only as necessary. And while doing so, think about the following. All food and drink should be for the purpose of helping the body and mind to do constructive things. Nothing should be put into the body of any creature that does not help to create, to think, and act constructively. It is not always easy to discover what is really food or what food is best for a person. It is not always easy to know the correct amount of food that should be eaten or the correct conditions for eating that food in that amount. It is, however, correct for each person to make a serious attempt to get as much information as he or she can about the correct foods to eat, when to eat them, and what to eat, and in what amount. Because something can be eaten properly with pleasure does not necessarily mean that it should be eaten. Many things that can be eaten do great harm to the mind and the body. The fifth thing is many things that people eat or drink do little other than poison the mind and the body. In addition, those foods or drinks that may be correct for the body or mind may not be treated or stored correctly, causing an incorrect result when put into a person's body. Sleeping, like eating and drinking, should also be done correctly and only as necessary. It is not always easy to know exactly how to sleep or how much sleep is necessary. If a person does not have the will or ability to think, speak, or act constructively, it may be because he or she sleeps too much or not enough. It is correct for a person to use the required time and energy necessary to constructively take care of his or her body, including the brain. To do so is more important than taking care of his or her garments or housing. If your body ain't taken care of, you ain't talking about nothing. If your mind ain't taken care of, you ain't talking about nothing. And if your soul ain't taken care of, you ain't talking about nothing. But all that leads into all the other areas of activity, including economics. Health and economics go hand in hand. He also goes on to talk about controlling our temper, making sure that we are maintaining how we behave ourselves, even if provoked. White supremacy is about bringing the worst out of us. So even if we are provoked by members of the white supremacy system, we should understand how to maintain and control ourselves, especially within the certain environments that we're in. Now, if you're in the proper environment to do something, then but it's all in all, he's talking about maintaining and controlling your temper. If we can maintain and control ourselves at all times, be disciplined about how we behave at all times, we will be in more control of ourselves and our destiny than we would know, and that would be a blow to white supremacy. So he gives 7 suggestions. Avoid making statements, ask questions. When in a confrontation, avoid making statements, ask questions. Be courteous. Make a record of what the other person said. Study each word of that record. Avoid putting anything in writing and giving it to others unless required to do so after you receive remarks in writing from those others. When required to respond to accusations against you and to do so in writing, start by writing something similar to the following. In order to best promote the production of justice, balance between people, I hereby request that an inquiry and or investigation be made of all the facts directly or indirectly associated with the matters in question, and that this be done according to all of the correct procedures necessary to guarantee that the same production needed to all have the duty to produce justice. Always be willing to say that you are a person who intends to do your best to replace non-justice with justice, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated, and guaranteeing that the person who needs help the most get the most constructive help. And number 7 is, when speaking and or writing with the intention of producing justice, avoid making statements that include any specific accusations. Practice asking questions. If necessary, many questions. Always do so with the intention of receiving logical and constructive answers about the best way to produce justice and or correctness. So next, Neely Fuller goes on to talk about avoiding excess. Avoid acquiring things that you must serve more than they will serve you. Read that again. Avoid acquiring things that you must serve more than they serve you. Avoid being possessed by the things in your possession. Do not worship the toys that you or others possess. When a person spends too much time and energy arranging, cleaning, and counting, repairing, and or protecting his or her material possessions, he or she will have too little time and energy for anything else. Too little time and energy would be used to think, speak, and or act to eliminate racism and produce justice. All material possessions should be used to eliminate racism and or to produce justice. In a known universe dominated by racism and by other injustices, no time, energy, or material possessions should be used for any other purpose. If things we have, according to the counter-racist logic, if the things we have aren't used in the elimination of white supremacy, then we pretty much wasting our time, because we're only perpetuating white supremacy. We're only helping white supremacy continue. And our time and energy is not being productive. And we acquire things that don't help us to help ourselves. Avoid wasting time and energy doing things that are useless and or non-constructive. So he's saying, instead of doing those things, do these things. And he has 4 things that he's saying do instead of being non-constructive. Study and observe in detail how to do something of constructive value that many people need or they need help with, and try to learn all that you can, the best way you can, satisfy that need by yourself with as little help from others as possible. Get as many skills as you can that can benefit you, basically, in a nutshell. Get as many skills as you can. Learn as much as you can that can benefit you and others. Try to learn how to do the best at 3 things that are of constructive value and greatly needed, and try to learn how to do those things in a manner that is effective and greatly satisfying to all involved. Keep what you do of constructive value as simple and as inexpensive as possible, and try to keep the reliability and the quality of what you do excellent, consistent, and predictable. Be persistent. Be willing to learn from mistakes and keep trying to do that which is of constructive value, regardless of opposing or lack of support from others. Gain as much knowledge as possible. Gain as many skills as possible. Be as reliable as possible. Be as available as possible. Be as handy as possible. Be somebody that others could use. Be usable. Be useful. Be productive. Don't just be. Have a purpose and get to that purpose. Whatever it is that you out there you're supposed to be doing, get to doing it. If you ain't getting to doing it, then you wasting time and energy. And stop complaining about racism because you're helping to keep going. Get up, get out, and get something. Avoid doing or saying anything that is unnecessary, that unnecessarily helps to promote a loss of constructive financial support for any person, white or non-white. Avoid doing or saying anything unnecessarily avoid doing and saying anything that unnecessarily contributes to any person losing a job, housing, health services, constructive income, or whatever it is, right? All people who exist in the known universe are at all times in indirect or indirect need of constructive financial assistance or something of equal value. When a person does not have the required financial support or something of equal value, he or she becomes an unnecessary or incorrect burden on others. Once again, have your stuff together. Have your stuff together. Don't be out here looking like you got your stuff together. We would rather you not look like you have your stuff together, and have your stuff together rather than you have your stuff together, and rather than you don't have your stuff together but you look like it. We're not productive. You're unproductive, and you're a burden on others if others have to take care of you, and especially when you're an adult. Get up, get out, and get something. Be productive. So that's the main thing that he's talking about in this piece is avoid being unproductive. Be productive. Avoid doing or saying anything that may result in the person not being able to provide for himself or herself that necessary quantity or quality of food, garment, shelter, general health care, and constructive relationship with others, or doing or saying anything that obstructs or subverts a person's ability to speak or act to promote the production of justice. Don't be out here being negative. Don't be out here making people lose their job. Don't be unproductive. Don't be mean to people. Don't take stuff. Don't steal. Don't rob. Don't kill. Don't lie. Don't do bad stuff. Don't do stuff that you know hurts others. If the things that you're doing are hurting yourself and others, stop doing it. If you aren't doing anything at all, just nothing at all, get up and do something productive. That's what he's getting at. So it was a question that he wrote. So on page 70, it's a question that's written. And the question is, and it's at the top of page 70. The question is, what is the best and correct process for seeking happiness? The answer is, during the existence of white supremacy racism and according to compensatory counter-racist logic, it is best and correct to seek happiness by directly and indirectly using all of your time and energy thinking, speaking, and or acting to replace the system of white supremacy racism with a system of justice and balance between people. Because that will ultimately bring the happiness that you need. And in giving that, you will start to seek happiness. You will find happiness. True happiness gonna come in being free of the system of white supremacy. Other than that, we're fooling ourselves because we're only trying to find a temporarily happy place in the system of white supremacy rather than having real happiness that comes from our independence and sovereignty, real sovereignty, not just sovereignty that people be talking about, but real sovereignty, because the system of white supremacy no longer exists or is weakened so weak that it doesn't affect us the same way. Do not take a vacation or wait for a vacation. Make a vacation and make one every day wherever you happen to be. And so this is something, remember, he said this is not about totally restricting you from living. You can live, but it has to be productive living. Do something that will constructively stimulate or freshen your mind and body. For instance, sit quietly and think constructive thoughts. Write a plan for future constructive activity. Engage in some constructive physical work of your choice. Read in a relaxed manner some writings that will give you constructive information. Engage in constructive conversation. Engage in sexual intercourse, but more than 2 times every 7 days. Quietly look at and see and or quietly listen to and hear the sights and sounds of all things around you, people, plants, animals, water, etc. Ask yourself and or others why everything is what it is and for what ultimate purpose. So these are things that we can do to help refreshen ourselves and relax ourselves and get away. Our own mini vacations, the vacations that we're making. Study your immediate surroundings. Learn to recognize the value of many of the very simple things that are near you. Avoid using unnecessary time and energy and materials to go great distances for the purpose of trying to obtain that which can easily and more readily be obtained where you are. Avoid thinking that what is distant is necessarily more valuable than what is near. Learn to see the value in much that is very simple and very near. Study things that make constructive use of what is simple, near, and previously unseen value. Stop thinking that you got to go all the way across the world to get happiness and peace. You can get happiness and peace where you are. It has to be constructive. What we're doing has to be constructive. It can't be wasteful. Can't just be out here just doing things because it sounds good and it feels good and it looks good. Is it constructive? At the end of the day, if it's not constructive, then we're hurting ourselves. Is it correct to be prepared to travel great distances? If so, for what purpose? And that's another question that's asked in the book. The answer is try to be prepared to travel great distances, but avoid doing so except for 1, special and constructive material gain, 2, special and constructive learning, 3, emergencies, and or 4, to help others who are most in need of constructive help. I'm gonna read that again. Try to be prepared to travel great distances, but avoid doing so except for 1, special and constructive material gain, 2, special and constructive learning, 3, emergencies, and or 4, to help others who are most in need of constructive help. Within those barriers, you can do what you need to do. Outside of that, you're not being constructive. Do the following in regards to so-called holidays. During the holidays, get with your people and study and or write. Exchange views about ways and methods of replacing white supremacy. Make no debts. Clear debts. Make no debts. Pay as many debts as you can. I said that. Spend money only to acquire something that is of constructive value that you absolutely must have in order to accomplish a constructive purpose. Buy at least 1 item of constructive value from a non-white person and pay at the same time that you buy. Think about and give ways to the source of all things by using all that you have received for constructive purposes. Now he's going on to talk about money. So how money comes into play. So to the best of your ability, practice trading, exchanging information, label, materials, etc., without using and or without directly depending on the use of money, whose distribution and or value is directly or indirectly dominated by racism, by racist man and racist woman, the white supremacies or white supremacy collectively. So being able to get the things that we need in exchange information, going back to the bartering system without having to use money, if we can find a way to get a system of exchange between ourselves without the use of money, we'll be on to something. We'll be on some independence. According to compensatory logic, there are only 3 wager maids. I said that wrong. According to compensatory logic, there are only three major ways of gaining so-called capital. One, inventing and or providing something that is wanted or needed. Two, robbing and or stealing. Three, asking, requesting, and or begging from someone who has capital. The only constructive choice that most non-white people have is the third choice. Is the statement true or false? So he's asking, is begging or asking for money from someone else the most constructive means of building the capital that we need? Is that more constructive than inventing and or producing something that is wanted, or is that more constructive than robbing or stealing? And all money matters do the following. So he's giving us 10 suggestions to do in Money Matters. Avoid doing anything to acquire money or use money in a manner that does not serve a constructive purpose. Use money, but do not worship it. Use money as a precision tool to be used only when necessary to accomplish a constructive purpose. Do not steal anything, rob anyone, take or use anything owned by others without the permission of the owner. Save some of all portions of money that comes into your possession. Expect the white supremacists, the racists, to cause you not to be able to do with money many of the things that need to be done, and accept them to cause you to lose money and or lose the value of money through their use of deceit, confusion, and refined theft. During the existence of white supremacy racism, avoid borrowing or lending money except when necessary in order to accomplish a needed constructive purpose. Avoid lending non-white people any more money than you can afford to donate to them or give to them. Instead, try to help them to make contact with white people who can help them get the money. And again, he's going back to using the allies and the resources that we have outside of our community. Try to make sure that the more money you acquire, the less money you spend. Say that again. Try to make sure that the more money you acquire, the less money you spend. Try to make sure that the less money you spend, the more money you invest to acquire more money. Say that again. Try to make sure that the less money you spend, the more money you invest to acquire more money. Do not invest more money than you can afford to lose. So these are 10 things he says to do with money. He also goes on to say, avoid borrowing anything from anybody at any time. If you must borrow, try to borrow from white people rather than non-white people. Avoid lending a non-white person more money than you can afford to give him or her. And he's once again talking about acquiring resources from people who actually have resources rather than trying to get resources from people who don't have resources. Now, if there's a non-white person who has the resources, then fine. But getting the resources from where you can, especially people who claim to be allies. That's what he's getting at. If you give money, give only for constructive purposes. If you lend only what you know you can afford to lose. If you lose what you lend, do not speak or act with animosity or seek to punish those whom you voluntarily made a loan to, that they did not pay. So explanation for all of this is, conflict between people should be avoided. Lending and borrowing anything often promotes conflict. And that's one of the reasons why he's getting at lending or borrowing from non-white people to avoid borrowing from white people to avoid the conflict with other non-white people who you may borrow or lend to. Non-white people who are subject to white supremacy racism do not have any control over the value of money in their possession, nor do they have any major control over the time, place, or circumstances that determines when, where, or how much, by whom, or for what purpose money is exchanged, moved, valued, or devalued. The racist man and racist woman, white supremacists collectively generally prefer that their victims of victims of white supremacy borrow or lend money. Let me read that again. I messed that up. Racist man and racist woman, white supremacists collectively generally prefer that their victims borrow money or lend money. They prefer this because they know that such lending and borrowing among their victim subjects is likely to promote conflict, animosity, confusion, fighting, loss of confidence, and or loss of possessions. Sometimes the result of such lending and borrowing is death. And a lot of people in the Black community have died or lost their money behind even $5. So that's one thing that he's getting at, is to avoid overall conflict or avoid dealing with people who are giving things that they don't have. Borrow from the allies The white people who are the allies who actually have the resources. Do you agree with that? Here's another question. What is the best and correct thing to say about those non-white people who have accumulated large amounts of money during the existence of white supremacy racism? The answer is, do not criticize any people who accumulate any amount of money. When talking about money, always say that during the existence of white supremacy, it is best and correct to use money in a manner that best helps to replace white supremacy racism with justice. Do not, however, criticize those non-white people who choose not to use their money for that purpose. Criticize the white supremacists, because ultimately it's the system that has them thinking like that. But we need more money. We need more black people who have the resources, putting that resources into our community and helping our community. Practice buying only the things that you need in order to accomplish something of constructive value, and needed all that you buy. So don't buy nothing that you don't need. Don't buy stuff just for leisure. Buy stuff that's good for you and good to you and that's needed. As long as white supremacy exists, except to be cheated either directly or indirectly in all major arrangements that involve money or trade, be prepared to experience harmful loss. Be prepared for major problems to be made to you that will not be kept. Basically, be prepared for white supremacists to be white supremacists and to be deceitful and to lie to you and to do their best to steal from you and take your possessions so they can boost themselves. Don't trust the white supremacists. Even the ones, well, all white supremacists, don't trust white supremacists. If you have to be engaged in anything with them, expect them to be white supremacists. Expect the behavior to be bad. Expect the relationship to go sour. Do not be confused when and if white people who are racist or suspected racist white supremacists allow some or many non-white people to acquire comfort, convenience, and or large amounts of money. White supremacists, the racist man or racist woman collectively function as a racist royalty. While functioning as a racist royalty, many white supremacists sometimes choose to present their subjects with the comfort, convenience, and grooming care that they sometimes give their favorite pets or their favorite creatures of entertainment. And I've always said that those black people are treated like the pets of the white supremacists. It's funny that he wrote that. I've always said that those are the pets. Those are the white supremacists' favorite Negroes. Those are the pet Negroes. So he goes on to talk about possessions. There's a question. When is something constructively yours? The answer is only when you are making constructive use of that something. If you're not making constructive use of it, it's not constructively yours. So he goes on to say, think about what you have that you have some control over. So think about what you have that you have control over. Seek to own, possess for the moment, the space and the things that you are feeling, listening to, or looking at. For example, if you are looking at a tree with the intention of doing nothing else with that tree, you do in truth own, possess that tree each moment that you are looking at it and enjoying it if you choose to see it that way. It's the same in regards to a mountain, a room, a flower, a cloud, sunlight, shadows, etc. A lake that you look at is your lake at the same time that you are looking at it with enjoyment. Think of a table that you use for a constructive purpose as being your table during that time that you are using it. Think of yourself as owning, possessing all of the sounds, the music that you hear and enjoy. Think of yourself as owning or possessing the happiness that you experience at a touch of sincere affection from one to whom you are pleasantly attracted to. Possesses, with quotations, with appreciation, that space that you often use and the things that you often see or touch, but do not regard as yours because you did not buy them. Use whatever indoor space you are allowed to have, and that has the effect of producing compact coziness, constructive sounds, and or constructive thought-producing materials. Seek to do this in a minimum amount of space that is comfortably practical. Avoid buying unnecessary space. Avoid accumulating needless items that add to crowding. Avoid being talked into wanting that which is likely the presence of pleasant things that are in every room that you visit as being your space and your things, but while you are there and in your memory. Basically, stop buying stuff that you don't need to buy. Stop accumulating things that you don't need to accumulate. Stop thinking thoughts that you don't need to accumulate. Stop living lives that you don't need to accumulate. Stop living lives that you don't need to live because it's unproductive. If you evaluate everything that you do and you come up with the conclusion that it is not productive and it is not valuable and it's not constructive to producing justice and correctness and ending the system of white supremacy, then by golly, everything that you are doing is wrong, and everything that you think you understand is only producing confusion. All areas of your life is unproductive, and it has to be rearranged. We have to rearrange the way we live. We have to change the way we live. We don't understand economics and the idea and the ideology and the logic of the compensatory code, the independent compensatory code. We understand economics and practice economics in the under the ideology and logic of white supremacy and capitalism, but not counter-racist logic. Under counter-racist logic, we're using economics wrong. We're using economics to give us a happy place within white supremacy instead of using economics to end the system of white supremacy. Once again, economics means the correct distribution of and or balance between all animals, persons, places, plants, things, etc. Economics is the correct sense and the sum total of all of the thought, speech, and or action used to produce maximum efficiency in revealing truth in a manner that promotes the establishment of justice and correctness in all areas of activity. Economics also means using all things, thought, speech, and or action with maximum efficiency with the objective of eliminating racism, white supremacy. And if we're not doing that, we're only fooling ourselves. So we got to be better. Get up, get out, and get something. Be productive. If you are being unproductive, be productive. Because if not, you ain't doing nothing but helping the system of white supremacy. Joseph Ward, happy Monday. Happy Monday. Make sure you catch the next video that's coming up. I appreciate everybody who's continuing to support this channel and watch these videos. Remember to hit that like button. Matter of fact, smash that like button. Share this video. Make sure you put your comments and your thoughts up on the video. Make sure your comments, your comments or thoughts have to be productive. If your comments or thoughts are not productive or constructive, they will be deleted. Say it again. If your comments or thoughts are not constructive or productive, they will be deleted. I want you to think. I want your thoughts. I want your comments, but they need to be constructive and productive, especially when you comment on this video, reading what we just read. So let's practice economics in a productive sense and help ourselves get better. I love you all. I'll see y'all next time.